Okay, so we had to talk about this. Last week we talked about Borderlands 4 PC performance based on launch code, and I think it's fair to say that there are a lot of problems, foundational issues, Unreal Engine 5 based issues rearing their ugly heads again. And, well, what can I say? The Gearbox's CEO, Randy Pitchford, has taken to social media to essentially, I don't really quite know how to describe this, to push back, I think would be a good way of saying it, against some of the narrative that's emerged here about the quality of the PC version of the game, and also, rather bizarrely, to offer individual technical support to certain players. This is kind of bizarre, but it's certainly kicked up a lot of controversy on the internet, and I guess we're going to talk about it as well. Oliver, what do you think about all of this?
Yeah, I think when you have a game that launches in a bad state with performance issues that are like really difficult to address and kind of profound, like obviously on the consoles, you have this horrible memory leak. On PC, you have this strange shader behavior with like lots of stutter, and then also like this DX caching issue that people are reporting, increasing the size of their shader cache like 100 gigabytes because they're getting like 10 plus gigabytes of cache shaders over time, which is kind of insane. I don't know where that's coming from necessarily. Lots of traversal stutters as well, or at least some traversal stutters, and generally poor performance for the kind of visual return, I would say, as Alex pointed out last week. I don't think that's stuff that you can fix just by kind of insisting that the game runs well or yelling at people. It's also not something that you can fix if, like Randy, you suggest that if people are upset, they try to develop their own game engine instead as kind of a rejoinder. But yeah, I think his approach to customer service has not been good, and I've documented a few of his unique approaches to customer service. So I have a couple tweets here, but he recommended extreme use of frame gen, 4 times frame gen to recover performance in an RTX 5080. He claimed in another tweet the game is pretty damn optimal. He said that the issues in question affect a very, very small percentage of users. And then in another tweet, he claimed that PC performance complaints represent 0.009% of valid customer service tickets, which I just don't see how that could possibly be true, you know. And then he says that gamers with 2 or 3 year old PC hardware should lower their expectations, which I also don't really understand, especially given the context of like modern PC hardware, where 2-year-old hardware, that's could be like an RTX 4090. It's just not really in concordance with the way that PC hardware behaves nowadays. So I think that, like, you know, Borderlands 4 hits kind of a confluence of kind of overlapping issues. In UE5, there are some issues with maybe users turning up their settings to the max, and I certainly sympathize with Randy a little bit, at least, when he says, you know, turn down the game from epic settings, because epic settings is maybe not helping out so much, because obviously, you know, that's kind of a placebo setting to some large degree in Unreal Engine 5 games often, especially with, like, you know, Software Lumen. Software Lumen has the same issues regardless of whatever preset you set it to, generally speaking. But this is a game where, like, no amount of tweaking, no amount of user-side fixes, no amount of Randy Pitchford telling you exactly what to do can fix its issues on different platforms. And I just think the smarter customer service approach is almost invariably to say, hey, we're working on this, don't worry about it, we'll have a fix for you, or at least we're looking into it, and not to just kind of spin out and address everyone in your comments, everyone who's putting you in their mentions on Twitter. That's always a mistake in my view when dealing with these kinds of problems.
Yeah, I agree entirely. It's basically like logo up top, black background, white text saying, yes, we understand your concerns and we're looking into it. We'll keep you updated with our progress, and then move on to actually fixing the problem, as opposed to kind of like, you know, suggesting that it's not a problem, or that, you know, PC users have got issues or whatever. Alex, thoughts?
Well, I'm tempted to I told Oliver this. I said I'm really tempted to actually try and see how big the shader compiled shader cache ends up getting in a game like this, but that would mean subjecting myself to multiple hours of Borderlands 4.
Well, 100 gigabytes shader cache, Alex, I venture to suggest that is somewhat extreme, and I don't know whether it's one of these
placebo,
one of these placebo fixes of which there are many.
So I thought about this, and I even spitballed it with Oliver. I thought, well, I mean, technically this game, I don't know exactly. NVIDIA changed it not too long ago. I believe the default shader cache for the longest time was about 4 gigabytes, and it may be larger now. I'm not actually certain. I'm pretty sure NVIDIA did change it most recently. But if you use, you can change that to a variety of settings in the NVIDIA app, I believe, as well as NVIDIA's control panel. But there is the case where it could end up being problematic on a system that has been playing a lot of games, and the shader cache is already a certain size, right? And then it's going to roll over as soon as you hit 4 gigabytes or whatever the limit is. So you've been playing a lot of games that have a lot of shader variants, and you load up another game that has a ton of shader variants, and it just keeps rolling over that max limit. And so you keep having more just-in-time shader compilation because the driver is culling the ones already on disk or something like that. If you developed your game to have 100 billion different shader combinations without any thought to what it would be like on PC, well, then the problem's a little bit on you too. So, I've got very strong opinions on this, and I disagree with Randy.
Okay. Let's take a couple of supporter questions. This one from Yinj. Good day, humans. I have a question about shader precompilation sparked by Borderlands 4. Is shader precomp black magic, or why is it so difficult for developers to have a complete set? Is it like a checklist you have to go through and mark, or how does it work? Is it just quote unquote lazy devs, or is QA, if they still exist, the problem? Cheers.
Wow,
Alex.
I would never say the phrase lazy devs ever, unless there was some really just like a video of a developer hitting upload to Steam after they just started a project or something. I have no idea. I don't think I would ever use that phrase ever. People work a lot on this. I think there's a lot of bad management decisions at times. But that's about it. But in regards to the problem, certain engines like Unreal allow artists to just randomly, wantonly, without much care in the world, create a whole bunch of different shader combinations. And that is just the base shader combination for a certain graphical quality level. And it may explode as soon as there's more graphical quality levels available to the user, which the engine provides. And in a case like this, Unreal is definitely that type of engine. And if you're starting a project, you have to probably right at the genesis or at the middle point of the project say, how do we rein this in to make it better? And I think that is a project specific problem, that you shouldn't be just creating 100 million different shader combinations because you can. At some point, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, you're not getting a great difference in the art visual quality by having a bunch of combinations. I mean, when you look at something like Doom: The Dark Ages, does it look dramatically worse with its small amount of shaders than something like Borderlands 4? I would contend it doesn't, right? So I think that's an issue. Another issue is actually the gathering process for shaders. Unreal still has this issue where it requires a manual gather of the PSO bundle that you will be shipping with the game, that will be precompiled at whatever point the developer decides to precompile it. And that manual gather process is still 100% a manual gather process, as far as I understand it. And, there's automated ones that like do global shaders, I believe, but it won't do game specific ones. And in which case, it is actually, it's not a QA problem. It's not their fault, but it becomes an issue of like QA needing to play the game shortly before launch with all the shaders, unless you come up with some sort of automated system. And I don't think the engine is doing that right now. And that's another area probably where there should be more iteration in the industry in total to make this problem less endemic to games, especially Unreal ones. Okay, so it is a big issue. Yeah,
it is the case, though, that in a lot of your videos, you're talking about a shader compilation burn that doesn't catch all the shaders. And that seems to be not great practice, right?
Yeah, it's also just really annoying, too, because it's like, I'd understand it if you're like 5 hours into a game and you open up a random chest or something like that, just like some like semi-hidden, not common area of the game. I'm not going to break a developer in a video for that. But like in Borderlands, it was just like, I'm pretty sure all I did, I don't even recall if I even changed the graphical settings after it loaded up. I don't think I did. It was already set to badass or whatever. but they were like immediately available with like visible within the first 5 minutes of real gameplay. And that's where I feel like there's a big disconnect, where I'm not sure always if the priority of developers is the same as mine, where I say at least have a really good first impression. Games can get technically a bit worse later on. And I think it's a bit more reasonable, but at least have that core experience in the beginning be very polished. Borderlands fails there. So, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. We got this question here from Creskowalty. Greetings, founders! ! Is Borderlands 4 performance as good as the internet would make you believe? Or as bad as the internet would make you believe? Randy Pitchford is doing a terrible job with communicating, but is he a tiny % right? A gamer's too stubborn with refusing to use upscaling and expect games to run great maxed out. Shouldn't the conversation be more about game optimization versus finding the best settings for your quote-unquote gaming rig? I think this is probably an interesting point to make, but probably not with regards to Borderlands 4, because we're finding, Alex, especially with Unreal Engine 5 games, that if you include the epic setting within your menu, chances are you're basically massively impacting your performance for very little visual gain. And it's to the point now where certain titles, for example, Star Wars Outlaws, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, actually put the maxed out settings behind a launch parameter to specifically lock you out of just maxing everything out and then complaining about poor performance. So to what extent is this correct, and to what extent is this incorrect for Borderlands 4 specifically?
Well, I think it is a shame that we're talking about it within the Borderlands 4 discussion, because I think the game has issues regardless. But I think in general, no one should ever max out a game and then start complaining. I think you need to first see what you can do in the settings to improve the experience. And that's the area where, for me, I'm pretty sure Borderlands, like many Unreal Engine, I haven't done it, but I know Hardware Unbox made a video about optimized settings for the game, and they found great wins very easily, like in a lot of Unreal Engine games, just by turning things down by like 1 or 2 levels, right? And that is actually a big way to win and not sacrifice too much in terms of visuals. And I think that's something every PC player should be used to at this point. And I don't think you should ever knock up a game to epic, ultra, whatever. From a UX perspective of developers, though, I think they should. I mean, I do kind of like the solution that Massive has with their Snowdrop titles, where they do lock it out. It's kind of like we let the power users actually, and turn on those settings. They even have a name for it. It's not like you turn it on with a launch parameter and it just like runs, but there's actually new settings in the menu, and it's pretty cool. It's really nice. But I think maybe everyone should take the route of what's the name of the developer who made Kingdom Come Deliverance? Warhorse, where there is a setting at the top, but as soon as you select it, the game makes it immediately apparent that you are doing something that is going to negatively affect the experience. There's like a warning menu. It has a name that is scary, experimental. Like, it doesn't sound good. Should I be even touching this? It's radioactive. And I think that is maybe my favorite way to do it, just because it doesn't have like the ability that you have to like learn about this online or something separately out of the game. It's still in game, but it makes it immediately apparent that the standard user should just be using the settings below it. So I like that. I don't know. What do you think, Oliver?
I think there probably is a conversation to be had about the utility of like epic settings presets or their equivalents or unobtainiums or whatnot in games, especially exposed as default, when they're exposed as default, because they don't necessarily contribute much to the visuals often. And especially in this age of VRR, I feel like that additional margin of performance can really benefit people in a way that it maybe didn't when everyone was trying to hit 30 FPS, 60 FPS, whatever fixed. Now people are going for, ultra high refresh, unlocked experiences, and I feel like it benefits people. a lot more in that context. But I also do feel like things are being scrambled a little bit when you have a 5090 or 5080, and it's still probably not a good idea to use epic settings or use native res rendering. Like, I feel like that just scrambles people's brains a little bit. I do think like temporal upsampling at least should be considered standard these days, especially with like UE5, where a lot of the lighting detail is scaling based on pixel count, and so it gets very punishing to run at native resolutions. But I do tend to think that people maybe, either one of two things needs to happen, right? Either the industry needs to change and do things, and some developers have also, like when you look at a title like Hellblade 2, I believe on PC, when that game shipped, it just exposed low, medium, and high, right? So that's a developer, at least initially, that's a developer that was saying, hey, we don't think you're actually going to see much of a benefit above high, and we don't want you to use it. Or alternatively, people need to come with the knowledge into games that when you select that high settings preset, in many game engines, that's very often a placebo setting. It's not going to be a benefit to you. And also, you should not use native res rendering just as a general rule with modern games that are more demanding.
Yeah, that is such a good point. Sorry, that Oliver's very right in the fact that I think the expectation of native resolution rendering, when you look at how game graphics are being made these days, especially on Unreal Engine 5, is maybe not an appropriate expectation. It's an appropriate expectation maybe for something like your Counter-Strike 2s, your whatever your free-to-play game is. But I don't think it is in the context of modern AAA very appropriate, because a lot of effects, and it's been this way actually since pixel shaders became bigger. Like, a lot of effects scale with resolution in a way that is detrimental to performance as you start ramping up resolution, right? So, and Unreal Engine 5 is just even more so this. It's not just screen effects, it's geometry, it's every, VSMs, virtual shadow maps, get more expensive the higher res they are. They're not a fixed cost. They're based upon what your screen resolution is. So all these things get so much more expensive. And as soon as you realize that as a user, then you should probably not be expecting native resolution rendering. And with things like DLSS 4 or FSR 4, I really don't think you're getting a lot from native resolution anyway these days, especially after you look after quality mode and all those things. Like, I was just showing Dying Light the Beast running with DLSS 4 quality mode. I could have easily ran it in DLAA and it would run but I think I'd rather have like a ultra high refresh rate experience, right? And that cancels it out in a way that Oliver mentioned. So I think, but maybe there should be some sort of menu, once again, a warning saying like, native resolution rendering will not bring you great visual quality increases. Are you sure you want to turn this on? Like when you turn on DLA or TSR native, maybe that's another thing that needs to be in the UX toolbox of a lot of developers, because judging a game by 4K native is super counterproductive.
I just think a sort of final point from me is fairly straightforward. Every developer that is producing a multi-platform project has optimized settings for their game, and they deploy them on the PlayStation 5 version. Just put those settings in as the standard defaults. And then maybe if you wanted to go a bit further than that, then, basically change the resolution according, or the upscaling factor according to the class of card that is within the PC. And that should get you most of the way there in for a lot of games. Obviously, when you're sort of talking about handhelds and people sticking to their GTX 1060s, it's a completely different ball game. But at least then, you have got at least an idea of what fades the developers were willing to make for their console versions, which so often now is becoming optimized settings when we take a look at it.